Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Valerie Mills. Thanks for logging on to My Fox Hurricane, where we are still tracking a couple of areas. The Atlantic Basin remains active here at the start of October. We've got two areas just off the African coast there. We'll talk about those in just a second. One of them already Tropical Storm Kirk, but it's this one a little bit closer to home right now. We've been keeping a close eye on it, and kind of the odds of this developing have been bouncing between 40 and 50% over the last couple of days. So no real big change in thinking here. Now, the National Hurricane Center has added that 10% chance of development over the next 2 days, but it's again more likely at the end of this week that we may be talking about something trying to emerge out of the northwestern Caribbean and get into parts of the Gulf of Mexico. Though more good news, models have kind of continued to back off on any potential intensity. So throwing out a much weaker storm, but the potential still there at the end of this week for us to see some areas of heavy rain here around the state. So as we're watching this area very closely, we don't really expect a whole lot of development here in the next couple of days, and that's why we're really focusing in on that 7-day outlook, where potential odds looking a little bit more favorable for development, especially end of this week into this weekend as it kind of crosses the Yucatan Channel. Very warm, deep waters, especially in this area that's kind of right around where we have that loop current that comes out of the Caribbean and wraps around the state. A lot of fuel for storms in that pocket of the area. And we talk about wind shear, and overall I think that's going to be one thing that this storm is going to have to kind of work against here at the end of the outlook. So this is kind of the area that we're watching here. You can kind of see that general broad area of rotation that's going to be moving to the west-northwest. But then we've got a strong cold front that's going to be dropping in, kind of bumping up right along the Gulf Coast. You can see those brighter colors here. That's where we have some stronger winds aloft. And of course, we know wind shear, not only does it help steer these storms, but it also kind of limits additional strengthening. So that's one thing now. We're looking pretty certain on the timing of this cold front dropping into the Gulf Coast at the end of this week, right around the time frame where that area of interest would be trying to move into the Gulf of Mexico. So that likely is going to limit strengthening, and it's going to impact where the storm is able to go. A cold front like this, pretty strong steering currents for a tropical system. So as we take a look at some of our models here and what we're talking about, really all of them continue to indicate, you can see some of these kind of large circles here. That's our models showing just very disorganized and broad area of low pressure. So something a little bit more condensed would show a stronger storm here, but overall, as we kind of look at our atmospheric spin, that's that area that we were just kind of watching there on our other map. And you can kind of just see this general area of rotation as it kind of emerges into the Gulf of Mexico. This is Friday night. So it's really Friday into Saturday where we're looking at the potential for this to move into the Gulf of Mexico. So at this point, it looks most likely that we're going to get some heavy rain here around the area where we get some of these brighter orange, red colors. You can see kind of stretched right across parts of Tampa Bay. Central Florida areas, not necessarily ideal after Helene and a lot of cleanup efforts underway here, but it does look like the potential for some heavy rain here through the end of this week as we kind of tap into this deep tropical moisture. So even if this just moves into the Gulf of Mexico and not really strengthening into a named storm or a hurricane at the very least, still going to be bringing us the potential for some tropical downpours, some heavy rain to parts of the Gulf Coast. And with that, we can kind of see our wave height forecast here as models indicating some of those bigger waves off the coast here, this green color. That's where we get those kind of wave heights possibly up to that 10, maybe 12-foot range. So that is something that we'll be watching into the weekend. Some higher surf, some bigger rain potential will be on the way, but otherwise we just don't have too good of an idea of what that potential system might do once it gets into the Gulf, but all trends kind of backing off on the strength of that area. Then we look off the African coast there. You can see all of that Saharan dust still continuing to come off the coast. And just on the southern side of that, we have two storms. One of those now an invest. That means it's an area that we're watching. And the other, Tropical Storm Kirk, which is forecast to become a major hurricane by Thursday. But the good news is, notice the steering flow. That storm moving due west right now, but starting to take on that curve to the west-northwest. And so this is expected to kind of curve to the north before it even gets anywhere close to the Caribbean. So this storm, not a concern, and that is some good news. You can see all of the models in pretty good agreement on the steering flow, kind of taking this up and remaining out to sea. But it's that other invest area that we'll be keeping a close eye on, as that could develop more and move across the Atlantic basin. All of those areas we'll continue to keep a close eye on, and you can find more updates right here on My Fox Hurricane.